Right. I promised y'all 2 demonstrations. I'd only because Matt jumped in and said he's got something he wants to do with this evening. Matt, are you ready to rock and roll? Let me hear Matt.
Yeah. Let me get cleaned up here and change back to that.
5?
What's that?
You want 5 minutes?
No. I can talk the whole time.
Okay. Go.
Okay. This is a 3-corner bowl demonstration. Let me switch to this here and go to my overhead, which is this camera. Okay. These bowls start off with a cube. Okay. They start off with a cube. Looks like this. Okay.
Now point out that the cube has to be a cube.
Yeah, this is about 3.5 inches aside. It's a little small. 4 inches aside is better. 6 inches gives you a lot to play with. The goal is to turn something that looks like this. All right, this is why they call it a 3-point or a 3-corner bowl. It's a bowl. This is the standard way to do it. You could also get creative and add a pedestal bottom to it, like I've done with this piece here. One of the things, this is an old piece of spalted box elder, and one of the problems you have to worry about is you have to worry about losing one of the corners. Okay, I got this kind of thin, and I dropped it, and I chipped off one of the corners of it. So you've got to be careful about this. Now,
dropped it. I believe the Band-Aid's under that glove.
Yeah. No, I got nothing under this, man. I'm clean today. No Brenda's Band-Aid club for me. I don't know if some of y'all were on my Facebook earlier today and you saw the fun and games I was having. I did a test piece this afternoon and shredded it. So this is one of the possibilities.
Whoa.
Let's see. I had another block here I wanted to show, but I'll do it on this feet. Okay. So the way you're going to mount this is you're going to mount it between centers like this. Okay. Between corners that are diagonal to each other. All right. And let me switch over to my little, to this here and show you. So these are all pieces that I've done. The piece on the right with the curved edges, this was literally the first one of these I ever did. Okay. And when I was doing this, I didn't understand exactly how the dynamic of this worked. And I started rounding it, and before I realized it, I'd rounded the corners where I didn't want to. So I had to improvise. So this shows basically how you start it and where you're ending it. Okay. You're mounting it between diagonal corners. So, I'm not going to show this mounting because I have a better way to do it, but your goal is to make a tenon so you can hold it in your jawed chuck. So that's why you're mounting it this way. Okay. Any questions so far?
No.
You were showing us a spur chuck a minute ago. Is that where we're heading back to?
No, that's what I'm taking out.
Okay. You really had me going.
I was doing something else.
Matt, when you say cube, does it have to be perfectly a cube?
If it's not, you're going to have uneven edges. Okay. Your corners and stuff will be uneven. You might be able to salvage it, but it works better if it's a perfectly even cube.
I brought that up because I discovered that a long time ago and couldn't figure out what was happening.
Yeah, and so one of the things that I've done is I'm not able to get these things perfect on the table saw, so I then take them on my band sander and get the blanks trued up that way. And they're still not quite perfect, so we'll see how this shows up. All right, so these are some of my notes on this. The project involves turning in midair. Basically, for at least half of the top of the bowl, you're going to be partly on the wood and partly on the air. So you've got to be very careful about where your bevel is and where your tools are and where your fingers are. So you can't ride the bevel, because if you do, you'll knock your edges off. Okay. And then the next admonition is to be careful to sharply define your corners, and be careful not to chip those corners away. So I'm going to switch over to this this camera here and show you a little bit on this, and do a little sketching first. Okay, I'm holding this between these two corners. So my bowl, let me switch it to this side here because it's easier. So my bowl is going to be here. My bowl edges are going to be here on these faces. Can you guys see this? Not
Yes.
very well.
Kind of.
Okay.
Nope. There you go. There you go. Right
Okay.
there.
So this is where, now one of the things I want to point out here is this face that is on the edge is flat. It's flat on the, it's a flat face on the cube. So when you're all done, you can do things like take a flat sander, or, you know, I've got it like, this is the piece in here. I could take a flat sander. This edge here is flat. If I want to true up my corners or clean up this edge, I can do it with something flat. The edges are all part of face cube, so you can do that. Okay. Questions about that?
No, I found it when I want to flatten it out, I just spray glue a piece of sandpaper to my table saw top.
That seems like a lot of extra work.
Oh, hey, it's dead
I
true.
have my Harber freight hand sander that I use. I just buzz it sucker off. Okay, so what I'm going to use to mount these is I have a pair of rubber chucky 3-point, he calls them 3-point chucky sets, and that's the last bullet point on this page here. Okay, this is the rubber chucky 3-point set. Okay, there are two of these. Let me switch back to this. There's two of these. They look like this. Okay, and I've got one mounted on the rubber chucky mandrel, which is basically a number 2 MT, and that's going in my headstock. And I've got the other one mounted on the inside of this is a 3/4 by 10 thread. So I've got it mounted on my live center. Okay, and that's going in my tailstock. So, and here I've got a piece of a cube of what looks like spalted sycamore. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to do a tenon. I'm going to do it on this side. And so I'm going to pick my stuff accordingly. And one of the things I think that these are the safest way to mount these if you're going to do these, because they hold them better than everything else. Now, one of the things you'll notice if you look closely at this one is it's a little shredded. I've done this a lot. I've taught this class at places. And these things you can, if you're not careful, you can break them. So be careful. Joaquin can testify to that. Can't you, Joaquin?
Joaquin's read a story about that, right?
Most definitely, I can back that up.
Yeah, I know he broke at least one of them. So, now, the way that Don at Rubber Chucky makes these is, this is basically my minimum tenon size. And if you look at my little thing here on the back of my lathe, it's pretty much the same size. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this as my measuring yardstick when I turn my tenon. So, and I've got to carefully position my tool rest here, because I've got to make sure that I'm not hitting anything with this when I do it. Okay. Now I'm going to turn a tenon to hold it here. And then I want to leave enough room here to undercut this, because I don't want the rest of this cube in the way when I mount it in my 4-jawed chuck. Okay. Any questions about this so far?
Oh, I got to see what you're talking about. To keep
Matt?
talking.
Yes.
Before you go any further, would you be able to talk through how you would mount that if you didn't have the rubber chuckies?
Yeah, this was the first picture on this. Let me switch over to this here on this. You see the number 1 mounting? I'm
Yes.
basically mounting it directly in my spindle.
Right.
And I've taken the center out of what this is a cone or a disc on the tailstock. I've taken the center out, and it's just the disc, and I'm holding it there. So I'm basically holding it just in my spindle, on the inside of my spindle, with nothing else there, and on the cone, or I don't know what, if you call it a disc or whatever, on the live center. Okay, does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yes, it does. I
I
saw
wanted you
this.
to explain that.
What's that?
Thank you. I just wanted you to explain that for those that don't have rubber chuckies or haven't done a cube bowl like that before.
Yep. One of the ways you can do this, and one of the ways I started doing this, is I was pushing it into my jawed chuck, which was an imperfect way of holding it. The spindle actually works better. Let me switch back to this.
Number one is how I do it.
The spindle works better. And what I would do is I would take this, I would very carefully try to get a very good cut and cut this bit off, and then put it into my stub center here.
Right.
So, but that's an imperfect way to hold it also. It wasn't always coming out true. Okay.
And I have a question for you.
Yeah, sure, Ronnie.
The rubber chucky on the tailstock side, did you have to modify that, or did that come with that 3/4 tin thread on it?
No, I did not modify it. It comes that way.
Okay.
Don makes most of his things with the 3/4 by 10 thread on the inside, and he also usually there's a tenon on them that'll fit in the standard jaws for either the Vicmark or the like the 55 millimeter jaws from the Novas. So almost all of his chuckies have both the thread in them and a tenon, so you can do it either way. Okay. All
Are they
right.
hard or are they rubbery?
Good. Thank you, Matt.
These are not the same softer material that his original chuckies are. These are a little more rigid, and the reason why he did that is so that they hold the piece better, and they hold it really well.
If they weren't firmer, they would vibrate.
Yeah, or you'd get vibration and things would be bad.
Birdwood.
Yep. Okay, so I'm gonna helmet up here.
I think this is kind of cheating though, isn't it? Makes it easy. Or,
There is no cheating. There's doing it well and doing it faster, and that's it.
One thing, Matt, is if you're doing it the other way on your spindles, you need to put a mark on your tool rest to make sure all 3 corners meet that point, or it'll be cockeyed. I know you've discovered that.
Yep. Yeah.
Especially if you're not in the rubber chuckies.
Yeah, if you're doing it in an imperfect way, if you're doing it like, yeah, I mean, you can see, I can point it here. So my corner's lighting up there, my corner, they're all in the same place.
Yeah, on the rubber chuckies they are, but when you do them in the spindles, a lot of times they, push them off. You got to hammer it around till you get it that way.
Yep, you do have to. Yeah, there is some. Yeah, there is some contortion
Wanted to make
necessary.
that point.
Yep.
Yeah, I put some super glue on the ends when you were just going to use your spindles, not the rubber ducky, to help firm up that end.
Now I'm just using a skew, and I'm using it like a scraper. And I'm using this as my tenon size. And now that I've got it where I want it, I'm going to check it. This is not much of a tenon. I want to make it a little longer, a little more to grab onto. So I'm going to take it in another 1/4 inch or so. And then I'm going to basically part this off here. And the reason I do that is because this stuff that's sitting on the end here, okay, that'll interfere with chucking it up. Questions?
I just got one comment about you wearing a glove, and for the new people out there,
I have a medical issue with my hand. That's the reason why I wear a glove on the left hand. I wear a mechanic's glove, so it's tight fitting and there's no loose things. And I'm always very careful about where I put my hand, making sure that it's never anywhere near the spinning material.
Thank you.
I thought he did it to hide the Band-Aids.
Yeah. So that's all these rubber chuckies are used for, is to get your tenon so you can hold on to it better. So this is my tenon, okay? It's not 100%, so you've got to be careful how you're when you're mounting it in your chuck that you get a good purchase on it.
Let me be asking this early, but when you're lining this up, would the rubber chucky help you bring it up the line?
Yeah, the rubber chucky it's a precision. It gives you a precision line. If your cube is perfectly square or really close, it gives you near perfect the way it holds it, because the ends here are very precisely cut in these, okay, to hold the cube perfectly. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but what I was referring to is why you're putting it in this chuck. If you use the rubber chucky for an alignment tool from the tailstock, would that?
Well, you can. I can show that to you how that works if you'd like to see it really quick.
And I mean, if for new turners that may be worried about this alignment,
It lines up perfectly. I didn't have to do anything.
there you go.
So that the rubber chuckies, using the rubber chuckies really helps line it up precisely. Now, one of the things I'm going to do here is I'm going to make sure that this is good and tight. And then I'm going to turn this bit of it off, okay, so that I can bring up tailstock support. So now, there are two cuts that I'm using when I do this. You can't really ride the bevel when you're turning here. Let me zoom in on this. I can't ride the bevel but I can have my bevel very close to where my edge is when I'm going through the center of the bowl, so that I can help line that up. And I can't ride the bevel until I'm fully inside the wood, until I don't have any more air that I'm cutting. So here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut down here on the bottom of the front of the tool, the bottom flute, and I'm going to cut in a sort of shearing manner, and I'm going to take very light cuts so I don't pop this out of the chuck. And I'm going to take very light cuts until I've got enough space to bring up my tailstock support. Now, the other cut I can make is I will make a pull cut this way. And the tool is not straight this way, so I'm not scraping. It's rolled a little bit up this way, okay? And when I'm doing that, I'm also cutting down here on the very end of the tool, all right? And I'm doing that so I get a shear cut. And when I get to this, the edge of this, make my cut very soft so that I don't break things off. So the first thing I'm going to do is to cut off this so I can bring up tailstock support, okay?
Somebody said cheating a little while ago. Here's the cheating. Here it is.
Cheating?
Just to use this tools for the best finish. It's going to get rid of the vibration right here.
I was just thinking of turning another tenon on that piece and then slicing the whole top off with a parting tool and using that as another cap or something.
Well, you could. I mean, there's a lot of waste here.
If you're doing this out of a burl and stuff, I guess you got to be careful because you never know what's inside it.
Yep, I probably have enough here. One of the things too that you can run into is because the grain is not necessarily on this piece, the grain is not necessarily conducive, is you could easily, where this, see, I've got straight grain here along this piece here. If I hit this wrong with the tool, I could chip off this entire corner. Okay, I could just chip that thing right off if I'm not careful. And I want this corner to be square here, because this is where my bowl is going to be. Because in order to maintain this square edge here, okay, this sharp edge, sharp corner, so it looks aesthetically pleasing, I don't want to chip off this piece if I can help it. So I'm gonna try to make my cuts to go in here and keep that from happening. If I'm coming this way along cutting, it's very easy to just split this corner right off the piece. All right, so now what I'm gonna do, and I'm gonna try to get this sort of profile. Let me see if I can do this. I'm gonna try and get this sort of profile. I don't have a whole lot of wood to work on. I've got to make sure I've got enough to undercut my base here. So it's probably, maybe it'll be this big. I don't know. We'll see. And it can get tricky when you get down inside, this part of it here, because you don't have a lot of room to work. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to shape the outside of the bowl, and I'm going to cut in like this to where the bowl's going to be. So I've got to watch my corners here, and don't go past this section here. Now, watch what happens when I turn it on. Can you see the profile here? Let me get my little black cheat sheet here. See what I'm looking at here, okay? This corner here is my corner. Most of this is going to go away. I'm going to be moving like this in this direction to get to my bowl edge, but I don't want to go past this corner, or at least not by much, okay? So let me reposition my tool rest here so I can get in there. And always, especially with this piece, because you've got a lot of air, always spin it to make sure that you're not hitting anything before you start the lathe up.
Now, his turn is make note. He stopped his lathe before he moved that tool rest.
Yeah, no, I don't usually do that, but on this piece, you got to make sure. Now, I've dropped my tool handle, so the edge of my tool is raised. And what this is doing is giving me a very light shearing cut, and I'm watching on the, let me see if I can shift this here. So I can see everything and back this off a little bit. Okay, what I'm doing is I'm watching the shadow on this side of the piece when I'm cutting, okay? I'm watching my shadow over here, and that's where my bowl profile is, okay? So I can see that I've got a high spot there. So I'm going to try and clean that up. And I've got my tool handle dropped, and my tool edge is therefore raised, giving me a shearing cut or a shearing scrape, mostly a shearing cut. Okay, now I'm all the way into the wood. And the goal is that I don't want to come back to this when I'm inside, because I don't want to have to, it'll be thin and it'll be unsupported. Okay. So here's where I am now. Now you can see how it's taking shape, and it's very close to my pencil mark that I was trying to show you. And you can see how it's sort of chipping out along the grain. The grain runs this way along the piece, and it's chipping out this way. So I've already lost some of my edge here, which isn't very fun, but maybe I can clean it up. Maybe if I go a little deeper or something, I can clean it up. But it's pretty wood. Okay, now another thing you'll notice is that I am all the way into the wood now here, okay? So maybe at this point what I'm going to try to do is to finalize this bit of it, and then I'll go and hollow out the bowl. And I'm going to adjust this a little bit. Now, when you're turning air like this, speed is your friend. And what I'm doing is I'm following the arc of the tool in here. I'm not riding the bevel. I can ride the bevel when I get down in here when I'm totally in the wood, but I can't do that when I'm in the air.
If someone were to ask me why speed's your friends, think about if it's going bump, 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 or drrrr, that's the difference.
Yep, that's exactly what it is.
And we have more of those sound effects coming later.
True story. Okay, so I'm happy with my curve here. Well, not totally happy, but it'll do for a demonstration. So now I'm going to go after my bowl here. So this is my profile. I'm going to now work to. I'm first going to get the meat out here, and then I'm going to get closer and closer to the edge. Once I get this part of the edge, I don't want to come back to the edge. I want to work in. So you'll see I'm going to hog a bit in the middle, and then when I start coming out this way, I'm going to make my cuts like this. Okay, and as I get to the edge, there'll be very, very light cuts. So again, adjust my tool rest. So I'm
Yeah,
here.
while he's at this point, consider that you could make this a three-sided box.
Yep.
But what just as it's sitting right now, draw across his put the wings in, and then put a bump in the middle, and that would be a box. I've turned those before, and they're really cool to demonstrate like he's doing right now. Somebody said this is the best show in town. Hey, folks, this is the best free show in town. Now, that's just town. If we go to Canada, we have to put it up against Cade's work, and well, we'll talk about that a little bit later on.
Best show in the world, Eddie. Best show in the world. Now, this is what I call a blending cut, where I'm taking a very, very light shearing cut across these little bits here, because I don't want to put any pressure on them, because I'll just break them off.
So the shearing cut, you're putting the flute almost vertical.
Yeah, what I've done is I've dropped my tool handle and raised my tool edge up. And I'm also, let me switch to this other here. Let me switch to the end camera here, and zoom in on it. Okay, I have lost a bit of the end, a bit of one of the corners here. Okay, so what I've done, so if I'm to go, my tool rest is a little high right now. Okay, it's above center. So if I'm to go straight in, then I'm getting a straight scrape. Okay, drop it here like this. Then I'm getting a scrape with my tool edge. If I drop my tool handle, the edge I'm cutting or scraping with rises, and then I can roll a tool up here, and the spinning wood is coming into the tool like this at a shearing angle. Any questions on that?
Good explanation. Thank you.
Okay. Now, one of the other things I'm looking at here, now that the lathe is stopped, also, is I see that I've got a specific thickness out here, but it's thicker in here. So I know that I've got to take this edge down here a little bit more to make this thickness of this wall consistent.
Well, you're right there with that profile. I was talking about making a box out of it. See the spike, the piece in the middle? If you domed that over, my pencil won't reach it. If you dome that over.
If you came across it like this and domed it over like that, you could have a box top.
Yes, sir, you do. And a grain match would be perfect.
Yep. So when I can see here that where I'm a little too thick, right through this part here. So you can hear how my cut changes to a lighter cut when I get there.
What kind of wood is that, Matt?
I believe this is sycamore.
A nice
Had beautiful
wood.
grain to it.
Cutting real nice. Got of course sharp tools now.
Yeah. Rule number one is when you're doing a demo is sharpen your tools right before. Even if you think your tools are sharp, sharpen them anyway.
I think that's rule number 2. Rule number 1 is know how to use your tools, and you do.
Thank you. Now where I am inside here. Okay, let me go back to this view. I said go back to this view. Okay, once I'm in past here, once I'm in past this point on the piece, I'm totally in wood, so I can begin riding the bevel in here. But I've got to make really, really sure that that's where I am, and that's what I'm doing. If I try to ride the bevel and I hit air, my tool's going to bounce and shatter my piece or tear it up. Okay? So in here, and you can see, down in here, I can ride the bevel. And I can make this cut all the way across the bottom, a bottom feeding cut, where I can come back, I can drop my tool rest a little bit and come back in a shearing scrape. Yeah, this is definitely sycamore.
Well, that's one sweet cut. Wow.
Yeah, it's pretty wood. Really helpful. Or I can cut it like that. And this gets me where I want to be. Now, one of the things you'll notice with those cuts, okay, is that I don't like to sand. And I'm very, very happy with good shearing cuts because it means I have a lot less sanding to do.
If you sanded it, you lose your corners, wouldn't you?
Well,
Your edges. I'm sorry.
What I do,
You lose the crispness.
you could, okay, but it all depends on the angle of how you sand. Now I power sand on the lathe, all right. So I have a drill here, a corded drill with mandrels, and I use I'll show you. I'll take one pass and show you how that works. All right. So I am very, very careful with how I sand these pieces. Number one, get your tool rest out of the way. Number two, get your tailstock out of the way. Let me see, I gotta put this stuff somewhere. Number three, take the spike out of your tailstock so you don't poke your elbow with it. Guess how I know that?
You read about it.
Yeah. So what I'm going to do when I'm power sanding is I've got these discs I've cut out that are various and sundry grits, and I write what grit it is on the back, and they go on my little Klingspor mandrel, okay, hook and loop. So when I'm sanding these, I'm tilting it back this way. So when the piece comes into the sanding disc, it's not clipping the edge. It's sort of bouncing it right directly into the surface I'm trying to sand. And I'm mostly just trying to sand this bit in here anyway. Okay. If you've got some ridges and stuff like they do, some are sort of showing up on the camera. I can't really see them on the piece, but they are showing up on the camera here. I will hand sand these off the lathe so I can be very, very careful about where exactly I'm sanding. So, but that looks like this.
I saw a fellow named St. Pierre do this in the 2005 AAW symposium.
So
Yes.
I'm tilting this so that that I'm not catching my edges.
And he created a dead man or a gapping block to match that contour and put his paper on there.
Well, one of the things that I do with these is these. Let me see if I can get this on the camera here. There we go. These sanding mandrels are soft, so they flex.
Yeah.
Okay. And the paper is a little bit bigger than my mandrel, so it also will bend and flex. So that's how I keep things where I want them to be. That very quickly, that was just 100 grit, and it very quickly took away most of those ridges. All right.
Nice. Nice.
So it doesn't take a lot to get a really good finish, and then you're just taking scratches away. Okay. We switch to this.
Can I throw something in there, Matt?
Oh yeah.
You said it doesn't take a lot to get a good finish. You didn't have to fix any tears. You had, like you said, good sharp tools and good presentation. You didn't gouge, you sliced.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I actively work on all of my, most of my cuts when I start getting down to near where I want to be with my final finish. Most of my cuts are shearing cuts or shearing scrapes. So I try to work on that. I'm not every cut. Clearly, when you're hogging, you're not working on that. But most of my cuts, whenever I'm doing that, I am working to get as sheer of a scrape or a cut as I can get. So that's my goal. All right. So I'm going to make sure now. I'm going to switch over back to this view. I've got. Let's see. I think that I'm going to reduce the size of this little foot I've got going on here because it's a little too big. So I'm going to round off these corners a little bit. And one of the things I've got to make sure I've got room to do is I want to undercut this. I want to undercut here. So I'm sure I've shown this before, but this is a parting tool that I use. It's a Benjamin Best parting tool. Let me get that little black thing out here again. It's a Benjamin Best parting tool. Okay. And it's a basic parting tool. It's a thin parting tool. And what I've done with it here is it's slightly slanted on the end. It's not straight across. So one side is higher than the other, a little bit skewish, if you will. Okay. And what that lets me do is it lets me go in at an angle. I can come in at an angle and get a good part, and I can undercut things pretty easily. So this is like one of my favorite tools now. So and that
Remember, if it comes another way from the manufacturer, you can change it.
Yep. So, if I'm spending, and I think this tool cost me $15 or something. So I didn't feel a whole lot of qualms about trying to muck with the grind. And it probably took me 2 or 3 passes before I got it where I wanted it. But, it was a $15 tool. I didn't feel like I could screw it up to the point where I would hurt things. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
So, all right, I'm going to make this a little smaller. So this is a shearing cut that I'm doing this here. And I'm being very, very careful. I'm not riding my bevel, but my bevel is very close to where the actual cut is. Okay. So what I've done here is I've rounded off my foot a little bit. So I don't know if you can see that, but this bit here is rounded off a little bit. Okay. So this gives me more room to undercut this here. So, and I don't know if you can see these cuts here from this little parting tool. Let me zoom in on that. But they're kind of, can you see how they're not straight? How they're not, I don't know, is that showing up on here?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. They're not straight. They're angled in, and that tool is giving me that, okay? All right, so now I'm gonna keep doing that. You know what, before I do that, I wanna put a little bevel in here. See if I can do it without screwing it up. I'm gonna add a feature. little bead. That's a skew. This is a detail gouge. This is called a design opportunity. All right, and now I've got to adjust this a little bit.
Matt, you may want to zoom us back out too, please.
Oh, I'm sorry. You're right. I will.
That was getting scary close.
Now that tool is a little too small to give me good purchase, to give me a good solid cut. So I'm going to come back with my bigger bowl gouge and do a slice here to clean that up, because I could hear and see the chatter, and I'm sure y'all could too. So I'm going to clean that up a little bit. Okay. Now, these handles are made out of 2x4s from the shop. This is picture hanging wire. It's strung between the two handles. I got a little hole in here. The picture hanging wire is tied through. This is my wood burner, okay? Now on this piece, you've got to be very, very careful. Watch your fingers. There's my burn. Shift it over here. There's another
Waiting for
burn.
I'm waiting for Jeff to jump up and say, don't hold that wire with your fingers.
Yeah, don't hold the wire with the fingers. Rule number one, if the lathe wants to take the wire, give the lathe the wire.
And don't touch the wire after you did that.
That's right, because the wire going to be hot.
Was that Joaquin again?
I think that was Doug Grimes.
Dean. That was Dean.
Dean Grimes, yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
Dean. So Dean's tested it too. Okay.
And also don't put it on your bench that's full of shavings. It'll light up those shavings and cause a fire.
Thought you folks in Canada like a little warmth.
Sometimes, but not that kind of warmth.
All these people been reading about this.
It's in that book, what not to do at your lathe.
And I'm going to cut this loose because the last one I did went flying. And I promised the guys on Facebook that I wouldn't launch anything tonight.
Might have gotten better ratings.
Yeah.
If it didn't hit a camera, yeah. All right.
Yeah, I just paid a whole $30 for these cameras. I don't want to kill any cameras tonight. So there's my little piece. Okay. There's my base. I've got to do some trimming off that. Now, let me show you guys what I do. So here again is let me back this up a bit. This is my Harbor Freight hand sanding deal. I am going to sand these flats here. Okay. Because they're flat, and I can. And it's very quick, a quick way to clean them up. So there is my little sycamore piece. I've got to clean up the bottom, but there's my 3-corner bowl. It's got a shallow profile, as you can see. I've got a bead and some decoration here. And I've got a foot on the bottom of it. So life is good.
Great demo. Great demo, Matt.
Very nice. Good
Great
job.
Just so you folks know, Matt was awarded the Turn of the Year for the Detroit area wood turners And he, like he does, he's done this once or twice before. Extremely good demonstration, Matt. Thank you so
Yeah.
much.
Oh, you're
Very good. I
very
really
welcome. Now,
like that
before we go
demonstration.
away here, I got one more page on this. So I basically, these are the steps. Okay. So I want to make sure I got this on the video. I mean, I just showed these. Okay. But these are the steps. So, and that's that's like the second one I did there. That one was out of Cocobolo. I was like, I can do this. So, but
Cocobolo makes a sweet looking bowl. Oh,
yeah,
Yes.
irritates my skin, but it's spectacular wood. Now, I don't even remember where the piece came from, but
for you folks looking at this, that will be on the excerpt that we do, or Dave does, for our website on this demonstration, and you can freeze it and make note of those items. He taught you well.
okay. Any questions on anything I did tonight?
Can I do that out of pine?
I'd love to see it, Ronnie.
How were
Ronnie-
you going to remove the button on the bottom of the pedestal? Are you going to carve and sand that off? Or turn it on?
There's a couple ways I could do that. One of the things I keep handy in my shop is a cordless Dremel. Okay,
Oh, yeah.
and this makes very short work of this. And I because it's end grain, well, maybe, but I also have behind me here on my workstation is I have a Fordham and 4 other Dremels, and one of those Dremel permanently has a reciprocating handpiece with a carving bit in the tip of it that lets me make very short work of those buttons. So let me see if I can drag that out. This is usually my preferred because it gives you a really smooth finish. And I've had enough times where I've gone through the where I've been a little too overzealous in the carving, and carved the and carved into the place, and then I had to do extra sanding, and we've already been over how much I dislike sanding. So let me switch to my overhead cam here to answer that question. So this is a WeCheer reciprocating handpiece. It goes on the Dremel. It takes these flex cut carving knives, okay? And the way this works is it only cuts when there's pressure. So I turn on the Dremel. I take my piece like this. I work with the grain, and I just carve it off. Yep. And Wolf always howls. One of my Malamutes howls when I do this. So you just don't try to take too much of it. So on this piece, the grain is running this way, across like this. So I am carving with the grain. And if I switch it around, I'll come back with the grain. Yeah. Can you guys hear that? Can you hear the dogs in the background howling?
Can't hear the dog.
Okay. But anyway, that's how I do it. So in 5 minutes I can have this off. So
Matt,
yes, sir.
It doesn't cost you anything to belong to this club, but this is an expensive club because every week I get off of here and you want new tools.
Hey, Matt,
All part of the service. Yes, sir.
can you put a link to where you got that carving attachment for your Dremel?
I think I got it. I think I got it.
Jewelry carving, and I need an attachment like that.
I think I got it on Amazon, frankly. If you're doing jewelry carving, I would. Don't you need more precise tools? This is sort of a wood carving.
I make jewelry pendants out of wood, and I got some carving bits that would fit in that tool, and I would like to use instead of doing it by hand, I'd like to use a machine.
Yeah, I don't know where I'm pretty sure I got it off of Amazon.
Okay.
It's called the WeCheer, WeCheer reciprocating handpiece. And I'd have to, if I can find it, I'll put it in.
Well, we
That
got,
same handpiece fits, doesn't that handpiece fit the flex shaft, all the flex shafts, the Fordhams and everything?
Yeah, they do. They have a bunch of those sorts of.
Because I have one I use on my Fordham now. Now, you said you cut with the grain. I cut across the grain and have a little bit more slope on my chisel. That way I don't possibly get a split out on the end of it as it digs into the grain, got weird grain structure.
okay, Mike King had just put that piece up on chat. Remember, folks, save the chat.
Great. Trade.
Yeah, you can get that tool from, actually you can get that tool from Woodcrafts, both for the handpiece and also for the bits that go with it. You can buy a pack of 5 and they have like a spoon, straight, they have a 90-degree. Woodcraft sells them.
Yep. And I think that the only other, I just have the 2 packs, which is maybe the one that came with it. And the other one, which is called, I believe it's called the detail pack. And the detail pack is the one that came with the straight bit and some of the others that were, but they're great for wood carving. So
Thanks, Matt.
Yep.
That's
Hey,
why.
Matt,
That's why we're here. Boy, look at the information we got going. All right. Matt, I got to say that was an awesome demonstration, sir. Very much appreciated. I've done those pieces in the past. You gave me some better ideas on how to do them, and I appreciate that.
You're welcome, Eddie. I taught a class 2 years ago, and one of my students did something in the class, and he might have done it by accident, but he added some things to it that was like that. I made one piece like that, but I want to try more. So I learned stuff too. So there's a lot you could do with these. You know, you can make the bowls deep, you can make the bowls shallow, you can do all kinds of things. So
the demonstration I saw at AAW, the guy, I really think his name was St. Pierre. Phil or Paul St. Pierre, and he did it nicely and very orchestrated. But we had some jaybirds in the front row that had 1,000,004 comments because they really thought they could do better than the demonstrator did. So I had to make him another round and watch it again and talk to him a little bit. And the thing about the cube, guess who didn't pay attention to that?
Yeah, it's tricky. It's real tricky.
Yeah. How hard is it to make a cube? Go do it. Go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, making a cube alone is difficult. And then, you know, like I said, I couldn't make one perfect on my table saw, so I was out here with the belt sander. But the real tricky part about this is the fact that you're turning a lot of air, and that when you're done turning air, you've got a propeller one around that could tear up your fingers, or if you're not careful and it hits the tool rest, it'll just break the piece. There's a lot of pitfalls here. So just if you're trying this, more power to you. Be careful. Watch, make sure you know where your fingers are, make sure you know where your tool rest is. Be very, very careful. Spin everything, just take extra precautions.
Make sure you keep your hands on the other side of the tool rest.
Right.
That's it. If you want to keep them.
Right.